Hello and welcome to the Dance of Soul. You're with Natasha Venter, who's a psychic medium. I do personal life coaching and I enjoy helping people work through their life strategies of, sometimes that shadow work, right? And we have Regan Forston here, my co-host and partner in the dance of I don't want to call it crime, but the dance of life. And he is a clinical hypnotherapist and does many things. And, we both have a lot of knowledge that, collectively we've walked through life. And, I've had a shorter life than he has, but yet life made me put both feet in and jump in and walk through the mud. So with that, we both have knowings, and we have a very wonderful guest here this time. And it's our first time really meeting him too, is Bruce Starr. And he is an amazing man who has also had some life journeys of negotiations. And welcome, Bruce, to our show. It's going to be an hour show. We're going to have some free conversations about things, but I'm going to let him tell a little bit about himself. And you'll have to excuse, sorry, just a second, Bruce. I'm going to make a little side commercial here. Regan is still working through his cough, so we're going to acknowledge that he is going to get healthier and healthier, so we're going to allow him to do so. If you start coughing, Regan, you may find me muting you. Okay.
Mute me.
Sorry, Bruce. Sorry about that. I had to do a little disclosure. Go ahead, Bruce.
Well, I want to thank you both for having me on the show. I'm glad that I found you, and I'm glad that you saw whatever information I was putting out there about myself became of interest to you. I have been on quite a path. As a matter of fact, I know you're on the West Coast? Are you Natasha?
I'm up in Washington State on the West Coast, and Regan is down in the San Francisco area.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I have my sister moved to Bend, Oregon after living in Los Angeles for many years.
Bend is nice.
Yeah, it's very, very nice. And so I've had many different lives already. I was in the entertainment industry out in Los Angeles, not just once, but twice. I was out there in the 80s, and I went to the improvisation every night that I was out there and became friendly with all the comedians, and eventually represented 35 stand-up comedians during the 80s golden age of comedy. Yeah. And so that taught me a lot about whatever I do, whatever I say, you have to throw humor in there and comedy in there, and it just makes the message a little easier to hear. But I was always, since 1975, it's a long time ago now, I started on a spiritual path. Funny thing is, I heard about this astrology thing, and I called the New England Astrological Society. I lived in Boston at the time, went to Northeastern University in Boston, great college town, great place to live. And I asked I wanted an astrology reading. So he said, well, where do you live? I said, Watertown. He says, oh, the president of the New England Astrological Society lives in Watertown. I said, wow, where does she live? Well, when he said the name of the street, she lived down the block from me.
Wow. Isn't that coincidence? I love synchronicities.
Literally around the corner from me.
Wow.
And she became my spiritual coach and taught me all about astrology. And she even said to me, you should take my psychic development classes. I said, what? I don't listen. It was rough enough believing in astrology, but what's this psychic development you're talking about? So in this class, one time she had a lady come in, sit in the middle of the room, and she said to everybody, just go over to her and put your hands around her, or whatever it is, and see if you can figure something out. So I remember putting my hands down her back, and my hand jumped 3 times on her back. What is this all about? And I did it again, and it jumped 3 times. And she said to me, so what, I don't know what the other people came up with, but I don't think they came up with anything that I did. She said, well, what happened? I said, my hand jumped 3 times when I was going down her back. And she turned to the young lady in the chair, and she said, "Is there a reason for that?" She said, "Yes, I was horseback riding, and my horse threw me, and I broke my back in 3 places."
Mm-hmm.
So I said, something is up here. I'm learning about something that I have no clue about, and there's something to it. And I just really started taking off from there. Astrology, of course, will help you understand people. And I say this funny, my wife is sitting right here. Why did you first start taking astrology? Help me pick up chicks in Boston. I'm sorry, I said it. It happened. But that's why I started, learning about astrology, and I had a breakup, like a heart breakup with my first love, and when that happens a lot, your life is a little different. Whether people want to know it or not, they go down a different path when it comes to relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Men or boys at the time, if they get their heart broken, if the girlfriend breaks up with them, her parents make her break up with you, your parents make you break up with her against your will, you get your heart broken. And when you go into a situation, I call it a full pie. When you're 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 years old, you're offering a full pie, not a pizza pie. I call it an apple pie, but it's full what you're offering. And in other words, no reserve, no fears. You're just in it. If you get your heart broken, I know girls have a slightly better chance of recovering because they have their aunts, they have their mothers, they have their cousins, they have their girlfriends to talk to. Hopefully, they get some good advice. Boys or men, do they have anybody to talk to? I don't think so. They're not going to go to the gym. And Joe is not going to say to Frank, "Hey, Joe, I got my heart broken. My girl broke my heart. She told me I was a lousy lover, and she thinks I'm a big oaf, and I'm so hurt." Is that going to happen? No. Basically, he keeps it all inside. And that's a dangerous place for something like that to stay. So when women or girls say, "What's with men? Why are they so retarded?" That's why, because they've kept all this anguish and this pain in, and they've had no outlet for it. And if they don't watch themselves, they can go off into a life of, I wrote 2 books that just published in the last couple of months. They can become a body trader. What is a body trader? There's no such word. There will be eventually.
Mm-hmm.
A body trader is someone who, hey, if you give up on love and you start wanting other things in your life like sex, security, beauty, you just start going for different things. So what is a body trader? A body trader is if you have enough of what I want, I will give you what I have. So it could be an exchange of security, sexuality, whatever it is. And that used to be called horse trading. But to make it a little bit more personal, I came up with the word body trading because really that's what it is. Instead of loving each other and being there for each other in a deep way, we're body trading. We're bouncing off each other. We're taking what we can get from each other. And so whether people want to admit that or not, I believe 80 and 90% of the world who are single are working in that way right now. They're too afraid, too hurt to come from their hearts, and they're just body trading.
Exactly. And that's the image that I got. I got the hit intuitively probably about, it's about 7 years ago now, 8 years ago, that it was time for us women to hold men gently and help them find their emotions.
Excellent.
Help them acknowledge that they have never been taught in generations, many generations, cavemen type generations.
Fred Flintstone.
Yeah, cavemen type, where men weren't allowed to have emotions. You guys were supposed to be tough. It was us women who were said, "Oh, that's just women's intuition." It's, let them have their talk. But but men, you weren't able to. And so this is the generation where, the men are learning to be more sensitive. Even my kids, I have one son, and I have a transgender into a woman child also, that, but I would say to these children, I understand that you want to cry. You can cry, but understand not everybody's going to respect that. And so if you need to cry, you have me, you have this home, you have this place to be vulnerable. Be vulnerable here. You may not be able to be that at school. May not be able to be that out in the world, but you are here because I want you to know that it's okay to cry. It's okay to be you. It's okay to do that dance. It's okay to be emotional. Because I can tell you that that's where alcoholism, drugs, that's where men, I've noticed that if they work with their heart chakra, they end up having heart attacks because they can't express their emotions.
Really, I love what you're saying about, a school child. I felt very, very deeply. I'm a teacher. I've been a full-time teacher, a part-time teacher, a sub, and all this stuff. And I've probably been in rooms with 10,000 kids by now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing that wherever I go, I hear Mr. Starr, Mr. Starr. Like I could be just a sub, but they're remembering me from 3 years ago and 5 years ago. It's amazing. So we have a really good connection. I think they know I really care. But I remember someone asked me a question just the other day, and they said to me, I wrote this book also, and I published them at the same time. The other book took me 30 years to write, edit, write, edit, write, edit, write, edit. This one took me a couple of years. And what does it say? Her Teen Lovecoach. So what happened there was I would see these 12-year-old girls, 13-year-old girls who were little girls emotionally, but my God, they had blossomed way too early and had physical appearances that would make a 21-year-old girl very, very jealous.
Mm-hmm.
And my heart went out for them in a different kind of way, because I saw that these two girls that I have in mind, they weren't hiding what they had. So here's a 12 and a 13-year-old girl being pretty voluptuous and being not shy about it and wanting the attention for having, that physical appearance. And I know from this point of view, all these years, that's not going to end well. It's not going to be a good thing, because who are they going to attract? They can attract anywhere from a 18-year-old to a 25-year-old. And, kids they lie about their ages. What happens? Somebody's 24 years old, they find out they're with a 15-year-old. So I saw these girls and I said to myself, I have to do something. And being a relationship coach, I literally sat at a computer and I typed as fast as I could what I was hearing in my head. And 272 pages later, I have a manual, a Torah, a guide for a young teenage girl, could be, for guys too, where she would meet this magical kind of guy in a park, and they both loved feeding birds. And after weeks and weeks, they started talking. And one time she would ask a question and he answered it. And then the next time she asked a question, he answered it in such a way that when she walked home, she said to herself, I learned more from this guy than I've ever learned about anything in my life. He becomes her coach for the next 5 years. From 13 to 18, he answers every question she or a young teenage girl could have to help her understand relationships. Now, in this day and age, there's more broken families than ever before. There's more divorce than ever before. And there's more absentee, I'll say, fathers than ever before. And what happens when a situation like that comes up, the poor mother has to go out and work 2 or 3 jobs just to luckily pay the bills. So what does that say? What does that happen? What happens to the teen daughter? Where's her parental guidance? It's gone. So where's she going to get it? She's going to get it in places that aren't going to teach her very well. So that's what this book is. This book is going to help any teenager, boy or girl, because a boy can look at this book and say, oh, that's what a girl feels like. Oh, that's what a girl thinks. So I felt so strongly about helping those 2 girls that I had in mind that I wrote this book.
What a blessing that you were able to be available to the universe to get your download, to do that, and then to have it written in a way that you, in a way of being the male, can give your perspective on what this, being the elder. A lot of people don't take in consideration what the elder of life is, the First Nation Native American, being the elder who helps the youngers come through. Now, I've met a 3-year-old elder before, so it's not about age, it's about knowings and availability. And there's these dances and we have these youngers. I actually work in an elementary school myself right now. The universe has put me in there. I was very dyslexic, so the universe put me in the elementary school system to learn how to read again. Like my husband would say, didn't you learn that in school? And I said, no, I was surviving, so no, I did not learn that. And my dad was vowel deaf, so a lot of the vowels and a lot of the words didn't make sense to me because I didn't understand the sounds. So I went back through, as my kids were going through school, I went back through and learned how to do. And now I'm a para-educator through the school system. So I see a lot of the same thing where, like I had a conversation with 6-year-old girls who was being fat shamed. She was a normal shaped girl, but she was being fat shamed by a male. And I was saying, to her that, we adults can't be around you all the time, but I can tell you, the more you let him in your brain now, in your understanding now, you're going to carry him for the rest of your life. So what can you do whenever he starts saying something to you? La 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 la. I'm not listening to you. I love my body. I'm beautiful. I care about myself. You don't care. You don't matter. Just because you're insecure doesn't make me insecure.
It's about giving them tools. And that's what this book does. It gives them all sorts of different kinds of tools. It's like a fiction story, but it's very non-fictional, which is when people say to me, what kind of story? I said, it's a fiction, but it's very non-fiction. I confuse people because it is a manual to help these kids. But, they'll only be able to hear it if you tell it in story-like fashion. And so that's what this is. I had so much fun writing it. I actually had so much fun that I started writing a book now for the lovelorn males from 18 to like 28 who are going around with broken hearts and weak heartedness. I don't mean to be, politically incorrect, but just not able to get it together, and they're playing games and they're body traders and they're not going anywhere fast. And if they keep doing that, people talk a lot about dying alone and being alone, and that's going to happen if they don't start being more of a love bug. They don't start being more of a love attractor and a love giver.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's the thing is that people don't truly understand what love is. Love isn't about what do you have. It's who you are.
And you have to have it first before you can give something to anybody else. So that's the big thing. People say,
I'm getting chills with that one.
I mean, how do I let somebody in? You have to let you in first. And it's so hokey, but it's unless you can get rid of I don't want to say self-hatred, but there's plenty of that out there. Unless you get rid of a lot of the things. Listen, we make mistakes. We talked before the show about making mistakes. How do you learn? You can't go through life not making mistakes. That's how you learn. You learn from your mistakes, but you don't beat yourself up because you made those mistakes. You gather your wits and say, thank you for that mistake. I appreciate it. I've got something to work on now, where I was just in the ethers before and not knowing what the heck to work on. Well, now I know what I have to work on because of this big old mistake that's still poking me in the arm.
Mm-hmm. I work with dyslexic kids sometimes, and this one girl who was dyslexic and English was her second language, and she'd start reading a word and she'd go, "Oh, I made a mistake," and I said, "You didn't make a mistake. You made a flubble." She goes, "A flubble? What's a flubble?" And I said, It's something that you just made a skip over it. You didn't know better to do better. It was a something that you just did and you didn't know you could do different. It wasn't a mistake. How can you make a mistake when you didn't know better to do better? And so it's like, so I said a flubble, and she goes, "Yeah." And I said, "You can't be mad at yourself, can you? Because you're smiling when you say the word." And so she went home, and she was reading for her mom, and her mom says, "You made a mistake." And she goes, "I don't make mistakes. I make a flubble." And her mom went, "What's a flubble?" And so it was kind of nice that she had that. So that's how I'm looking at mistakes now. I made a flubble,
And being around the comedians, now that I think about it, everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
I'm around these, just literally around all these comedians for years and years, and they have some crazy lives. Talk about, a lot of depression and a lot of self-deprecation in their humor. They have a very difficult time, and that's where they get their humor from. If they weren't abused as kids, this is crazy. If they weren't abused as kids, they never would be able to go through the process of being a stand-up comedian because of all the abuse they take from not just the audience when they heckle them, but from the comedy club owners and from the other comedians. Mm-hmm. If they're not used to being totally disrespected and abused, remember I told you I was out in California twice, right? I was out there in the 80s and I left because I saw I can't have a life for myself out there. It's too dysfunctional, as exciting as it was and as much fun. I left, but I loved it so much, I went back again. And because it's not the right industry for me in the long run, I left again. But you have to be able to find a place for yourself and a balance. And so I started doing speaking and professional speaking and TV and radio hosting. And so, you learn from everything that you do.
I was, I was tried to get on stage at the Comedy Store 1980.
I missed you by 1 year.
Yeah. Well, and I learned a lot. It was a big lesson for me the first time. I had become a ventriloquist a couple years before, and I heard about the Comedy Store, so I came up with a routine. I drove all the way down to LA, and I'm thinking, comedian, that's got to be just a big bunch of nice guys, and this is going to be fun. So I sign up to go on stage at their open mic night, and this one comedian comes up to me and says, "Well, you got to stand over here so you can get picked," And I said, "Okay." So I'm standing there, and the night's going on and on. It's getting later and later and later. And finally, the guy that's putting people on the stage says, "Well, that's all for tonight." And I said, "Well, look, this guy told me I'm supposed to stand over here so I could get picked." And the guy says, "No, man, he just did that so you couldn't get on stage, And it really hurt me. I thought, here's this comedian guy, and he backstabbed me so that he could get time on stage. I couldn't. And so I didn't give up though, and I went to the Improv a couple of weeks later, and I was like last in line. The time I went on was almost 1 or 1:30 in the morning, and there was only 3 or 4 people left in the audience. And so here I am, my first time kind of getting some experience. So I'm up there with my dummy, Andy, and the guy that was in the audience was from Car 54, Where Are You, or something.
Joey Ross?
Yeah, that he was there, and I got one laugh out of him. I forget what joke it was, and
Did he
so
go, ooh, ooh,
it's
ooh?
something. Yeah, it was. Yeah, you can hear his voice, like that. So he was there, and a couple
You
other
wouldn't know
people.
this, Natasha. We're
Yeah.
sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I
So
get it.
and that was, and then finally got a job at a honky tonk nightclub there on the strip in on Sunset. No, wait a minute. This was in Las Vegas. I got a little job, and it was a country western place. But in the break, they would let a comedian come on, and Vegas. So I was doing it, and I got booed so bad during the first set that I did that I was supposed to do a second set. Well, I just packed up and ran out the back door. It was so I know what you mean about comedians take. There's a lot of dysfunction. There's a lot of stuff, but there's something in you. There's something in us people that do comedy and that like forces you to just keep taking that abuse until you get it
Uh,
right.
so
And then
I don't usually talk about this, but in my first, I really wanted to be a personal manager,
yeah.
which meant that you work with an actor, an actress, a singer, dance, whatever, and you kind of help mold their career. That's really what I want to do. But I ended up being an agent for these stand-up comedians. I actually represented 35 of them at one point. But I really resisted wanting to be an agent because everybody hates their agent. Their agent never gets them enough work. Everybody hates their agent. But I don't want to be an agent. But
Yeah.
my roommate, who was a comedy writer, Barry, he said, "Listen, if you be an agent for these guys, the comedy club explosion was happening right in front
Yeah.
of our eyes.
It was.
Every comedy club in every city had a comedy club, and here I was with 35 stand-up comedians." And he said, "Just go up to them and say," because they don't want to call. They don't want to call for themselves, the comedy clubs, and their agents for TV programming is too small to call. So I had this really nice little niche, and 35 of the guys said I could call for them. As a matter of fact, I have a video series called 80s 80s Golden Age of Comedy. If anybody writes that down, 80s Golden Age of Comedy. I interviewed over 50 stand-up comedians from the 80s and got their stories.
Wow.
Oh, it was such an interesting time. Do you remember any of the guys that you sort of were around you that
Well, I was from out of town. And so what I did is I took things in my own hands, and I started going the corporate route, and I started booking myself at for corporate events, and then I did that for almost 30 years.
Oh, wow.
Because that paid well. The comedy clubs don't pay anything. But now let me put a spiritual. I'm gonna put a spiritual thing on this. Twist. Yeah. I had, I help people through the Newton Institute. I get people I've been certified through them. And in the process, I get people to go really in a deep trance state, which most people can reach. Well, there's one of my clients, when she walked in for her session, she just made me laugh and smile just when I saw her. She was so bubbly and so just had this energy that, you figure everywhere she goes, everybody's going to feel good. She has just this beautiful energy about her. And we got talking about that. And she says, I try to look at the fun in everything, and when I have difficult things in life, there's always a flip side to it where you can laugh about something you're going through that's very serious,
Mm-hmm.
And so she gets in deep trance. She goes to a past life very easily, sees herself pass away. And then we're trained at that point. We ask her and said, what happens now? And they say, well, they kind of turn around in a sense, and there's a guide or an angel to take them back home, back to the other side. And so right at the very beginning, she sees her guide, and I said, well, can you describe to me what he looks like? And she said, oh, he's kind of coming and going in physical form, looks male, and has all this beautiful energy around him. And I said, well, let's ask the guide what his name is so we can communicate with him as we're going on this journey. And the guide says to us, he says, well, just call me Bob.
Bob Hope?
So just Bob. So that in other words, she started laughing. I started laughing so hard. She's in deep trance, and she got me. It's like when someone starts laughing so hard and you can't stop. So here's the therapist, and then there's her in deep trance. We're laughing so hard, and so I had to do some deepening techniques, take her back down again. Bob was still there, and he proceeded to take us all around. So I got the idea about 3/4 of the way. She went to a council where she got her questions answered. She had prepared for her session about her life, about her mission, and all that. It was so seamless. She was having this. We spent about 2.5 hours in the afterlife, and she saw relatives that had passed away, had conversations. So towards the end, we had a little time, and she still was up for exploring heaven a little more. So I asked her guide. I said, "Do they have comedy in heaven like that?"
Oh,
And the guide says, "Yeah, sure, yeah, we do." And immediately she was in a comedy club, and Rodney Dangerfield, who had passed on, was on stage. Okay, and so so she says, "Well, I didn't really think he was that funny here,
I didn't
So so
he gets no respect.
so he was on stage. He does this joke, and some angel wings go whoop, flopping on him, and then the audience is laughing hysterically. And she says, "Well, I don't get most of these jokes. I think you have to kind of be there to kind of get this, kind of like heaven jokes or something." But then I asked the guide there. I said, "That's so beautiful that there's comedy in heaven." He says, "Sure." And I asked him. I said, why do we not take comedy as like being an important thing of life? You're like, why do we think, oh, it's just, somehow or another, it's like if you're not serious in life, like anyway, through my client, the guide gave me this whole dissertation on why God it says comedy is important in our life, and it was beautiful. I have to write it down time and do a little article on it because it was beautiful. They were talking about how when we laugh, when we help make other people laugh, it's actually it helps us get to that next step of evolution. It
Yep.
rises us up. It lightens our hearts. And it said that comedy is part of love, and how important it was. So it was a great session. It was like the theme of the session, it was about comedy.
I teach young people because sometimes they approach love and relationships if they don't have much success, and if they happen to find somebody, they get so serious. I was so serious. I have half of my experiences I wrote in my books, so serious. And I teach them now that if you could get someone to laugh, and I don't mean tell jokes, but if you can just get someone to laugh, and if they laugh with you, half your job is done of them getting to know you. You don't have to work so hard.
Yeah.
So if you can get someone to laugh and they're laughing with you, that's a great way to bridge a gap really, really quickly. Comedy's amazing. I want to tell you a Rodney Dangerfield story I like to tell. So at the Improv, it was busy every night except Monday night. And Bud Friedman and his owner, Mark Linnau, decided, let's do something fun on Monday night. Let's have a dance night, and we'll play music, and we'll put the chairs aside, and the comedians or whoever shows up can dance up a storm. Well, when I tell you these people, that Bruce Willis and Bette Midler and Michael J. Fox, I mean, I could just go on and on, the people that showed up. But Rodney showed up one day, and he was watching all the actresses in their skimpy outfits and dancing and everything. But Rodney walked in with this two-piece light blue shiny suit, okay? So that's like already a little funny. But right here was a huge chocolate stain. He wasn't shy at all. He was just standing there with that big chocolate stain on his suit. I mean, I guess you had to be there.
Yeah, it was funny. Well, Friedman, that's who was sitting next to this guy from Car 54. It's like that the guy, the owner of the club, was there. So I had, talk about pressure when you're new and you're trying to do a routine for the first time, and you've got the owner of the club and you got all these ideas and I really sucked at that time, but that's you got to do. I went on to be pretty good, after then doing corporate shows. Gosh, I did like 200 of the biggest corporations in America and got paid well, and they'd fly me in and do a show, and I felt like a celebrity, at times.
I'm so glad to hear that, because the biggest act in comedy right now is Jeff Dunham.
Oh God, I love him. He autographed his. I went to his book signing when he did his book in L.A. and he signed. Got his book right behind me here. Actually, he's my favorite.
If you've ever seen his shows, he fills hockey arenas.
Oh, I know it. He's funny as heck. I mean, he's great. Well,
and he laughs at life, and that's the thing. To kind of get this back down around a little bit to relationships and stuff. And Regan, I'll get you a chance to talk with, because I don't want you to lose your thought. But it's one of those things that I know for me, after 33 years of marriage, if I don't laugh a little bit, oh my gosh, we can go down that rabbit hole very quickly.
Yeah. One of the biggest things I think in spiritual development is seeing a person who can laugh at themselves. I think that's some self-love right there. Patty, my significant other here, she's that way. She's adorable and has just a great sense of humor. And I love that. But, what I was thinking of, it's funny so many times because I was on a spiritual walk along this 30 years that I was doing this comedy. And as a ventriloquist, I really feel that like I had a little talking dog that was so heartfelt that he would do comedy. People would be crying sometimes because he could really get to their hearts. And this whole time as I'm doing that, it really feels to me that my puppet is somebody totally real. I mean, it was so real to me that it seemed like I'm working with a partner, even though I knew it was me. But yes, so I'm really thinking it's some of this stuff that happened was like my higher self, like that higher part of it was the part of myself that was totally about love, that would never hurt or do anything wrong to anybody, but give just unconditional love, and that's what came out of this other self. And I think that's what made it so real to my audience, is the fact that this character that I had was, I'm here and having an argument with them, and it's myself I'm arguing with, but I know I'm feeling like it's a different person. It was a little spook.
You had a chance to have an outlet through your puppet, and no, people don't have that. That's great.
Yeah.
By the way, before we go any further, my wife is sitting right off stage here to the left, and I know she's saying to herself, "Oh boy, I want to work with Natasha. Oh boy, I want to work with Regan." I can hear it in my ear.
I hear you. Well, I'm going to take a little side commercial here, because this is Bruce Starr. He's our guest. And if you have any comments, please put in your thoughts about this conversation or a conversation about life, because I know that a lot of us are struggling right now. And, we're getting into that serious boat. And I can tell you that, I mean, working in the schools, I don't know, you working where you have, that since COVID, it's been a swimming through muck with emotional baggage from children and adults. We're all kind of in this dance of emotions that we don't know what to deal with. And comedy is one of those things that if we can laugh, you can't be sad and laugh at the same time.
Yeah.
You can't be depressed and grateful at the same time, and I know for me, a lot of times when I'm feeling that energy down, I like listening to rock. I'm a rock girl. And so I listen to Shinedown's How Do You Love? And one of the verses of it is, you lose your way from the cradle to the grave, but in the end, how do you love? And that's my mantra in life, is how do you love through the journey, like we were talking earlier before the show about, and I was telling you about Bruce, about, my husband, and being an alcoholic and now sober for 11 years. And you asked me about a dry drunk, and not very many people understand that there is dry drunks after you get sober. That you go back through that rabbit hole of emotions and the old patterns and the old rhythm, and and the story was, at that time, my husband basically said I was a shitty, excuse my language, a shitty wife, and either I got better, I moved out, or I paid rent. And I just made dinner, and I'm like going, okay, what do I do with this? And I really had to work through it. But then, what did I do to get rid of that old trigger of the PTSD that I'm going to tell you, being married to an alcoholic for 23 years, you do get kind of some of that PTSD syndrome, and that was an old pattern. And so what did I do? I had to find something. I had to find joy. I had to find that moment to work through it, because you never know what is on the other side of these implosions, of these dances of emotions and these kinds of things. So it's an interesting dance. And Paula Sheehan, hi Paula, how you doing? So Paula,
Hey, Paula.
This Kindred Stories, interested since he was
the screamer. He was the screamer, right?
He was. He was a spiritual guy. I guess he turned to being a reverend somewhere along the line, but no one was crazier than Sam Kinison.
Uh-huh.
And he was a comedy store guy. I was an improv guy. So I go over there sometimes, but I don't really know much about him other than the stories I heard from the other comedians who were his roommates, in and out, during the years before he took his life, and everybody loved him. I don't remember anybody saying anything bad about Sam Kinison.
Well, and how I hear how he died is it was a car crash, I think, and he was laying there bleeding out or something, and they were calling the ambulance, and he looks up at whoever was there with him, and he said, "It's all right, it's all right," like he was seeing the angels, or he was seeing. It was very spiritual the way he passed. I mean, the way it was told, that way. And I remember hearing that years ago, that way, because it's always sad when, just like when Belushi died and oh my gosh.
I have a Belushi story.
John Candy. Yeah.
One night I was at an after hours club. A friend brought me. I didn't do that at all, but this friend brought me to an after hours club in Sunset Strip, and it was upstairs, and I was in a room with about 10 or 12 people, and they were drinking, and I wasn't even much of a drinker. I was just kind of watching, and John Belushi walked in, and he had on, I'll never forget it, he had on this hat, like those snap hats, and his face was this big and gray, and he could barely talk. He could barely do anything, and he died 3 days later.
Wow. Yeah, he was. He got to be a real mess that way. Well, it's funny because we're talking about comedy and love and everything, and then you see how tragic it is in some people's lives, and these comedians who make people laugh. Sometimes a lot of them have really deep issues themselves.
Robin Williams.
Right.
Oh, Robin Williams.
I actually grieved when he passed.
I did
there
too.
was something magical about that man.
Yes. Americana suffered when he passed.
He did. For those of you watching now too, on another program that's like Natasha and I's, where they have a Richard Martini. It's called Hacking the Afterlife, or the Flip Side, and he has a very talented medium just like Natasha on his show, and she channeled, or they got to talk to. They got to talk to him on the other side, and it was a very uplifting, beautiful thing that Robin Williams.
He's a star being. He was a star being.
It was very, very beautiful. So you could find that if you go to Hacking the Afterlife and just try to find the one that was on there where they channeled Robin Williams. But what I hear women say over and over again when they're asking women, and they say, "What do you want in a husband?" And almost always somewhere in there, they say, "I want some man who can make me laugh." Like that's really important, that way to women in a relationship.
Well, if you ever saw Robin on the Tonight Show, and if you saw him on his TV show, he's just nonstop. And when I remember many times he'd walk into the Improv at 11:30, and the people would just part, and he would go to the back, and whoever was on stage, they just knew Robin was going to go on now. They went into the audience, and Robin just killed it on stage. Yeah. Gilda was before my time, but I do know a writer who wrote Saturday Night Live when
She was an
he was
artist.
on. And
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you that he's on my Facebook. To this day, he still has not gotten over losing Gilda. And he wasn't married. I'm not sure if they were romantically involved. And
Yeah.
my wife knows him, sweet guy. To this day, I see him remarking about Gilda. So it was quite a loss. She was a very, very special person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's,
Oh, wow.
that's the thing is that, like she was mentioning after an intense film about that sometimes when we go through life and we've put on this perception, like I've been talking to a friend of mine who is going through a very hard time and she's getting distracted by doing some other things, going out, having fun and that kind of stuff. And I said, it's really nice to be distracted by the realities of our world. But if we do our distractions are the things that trigger us in our mind, then sometimes we don't have the tools to get lifted up out of it, if that makes any sense. That sometimes life puts us kind of like a double dose. We're living our brain and then we play a part that we're living our brain, and it's like, holy crap, that thing that was distracting me is the same thing I'm living with. How can I escape it?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Regan.
Well, let's see, really did a huge disservice there. Talking about Gilda. The medical community really, I know there was a lot, I forget what she was, some kind of cancer or something she died of.
Yeah. Breast cancer?
I think so.
Breast cancer. And that was back in the 80s when the medical history, the doctors didn't know diddly squat, especially diddly squat about the woman's body. So she was probably one of the waker uppers of that. The woman's body needs to be looked at a little bit differently and a little bit more with ownership.
So
Paulus is very sad.
I want to ask Bruce. So, in a sense, now you've become a light worker for helping people to deal with relationships, right?
Yes.
In other words, to try to get them to approach their relationship from a higher standpoint,
exactly.
where they really realize that they're here to teach each other, they're here to grow from each other, and that conflict and everything a lot of times is a way of growing. And because some people at the first conflict they have, they want to run, out of the relationship or something, and so they realize no, you gotta, if you stick it out, a lot of times you can learn a lot about yourself, and you can help your mate to learn a lot about themselves. Someone told me that relationships, it's like when you're put with somebody, it's like the other person is like a divine sandpaper, like divine sandpaper to help us. And that's been the story of my life is the women that have been in my life have actually been, I give them the credit for waking me up.
Sure. And the books that I've written a lot about these relationships that I've only written about the ones that bring me a little step closer to understanding things. But I was going to bring something up earlier. The way I help people, you said about helping people grow. I bring up the chakras, and a lot of people know what the chakras are now. Let's just say we have 7 energy centers, and they start way down here in the sexual area, and then it goes up here and here and here and here. So I explained to people that when I was 18, I was stuck in my lower chakra. And my secretary, who is a meditator, would say to me, Bruce, you're stuck in your lower chakra. What am I going to do?
But that's where men, boys are through so much of their life is their lower chakras, and they haven't gotten up into their minds and how to think through life, where us women spend a lot of time up here and we don't know how to get down into our bodies.
Interesting. So
opposites make us balanced, right? Absolutely. If we know how to balance. That's one thing that I've talked to my husband about. Honey, this is your strength, my weakness. Can you do that for me? Kind of like birthday cards. He would get mad at me because I wouldn't do birthday cards. I said, honey, you remembered them. Get a card or tell me to get the card. I'll write in the card and you mail it off. We have our strengths. We have our weaknesses. Can we work together and make a good team? And since we've gotten into that rhythm, our marriage has turned out to be the best it's ever been after 30 years.
Wow.
Yeah, the goal. Go ahead, Bruce.
When I was going through, when I left, remember I said I left LA the first time, and I moved to Manhattan, and I was lost. I went from show business, woohoo, to Manhattan, which is a great place, but I didn't know what to do with myself. And because I was on a learning path, a friend of mine told me about this 12-step program to help me understand money. So I went to it, and that was my social life. And then I wanted to study this alcohol thing. So I used to go to AA meetings, and I go to Al-Anon meetings, and I meet all these people. And the one thing I found out about alcoholics, which has always stayed with me, and I learned so much from these 12-step programs, that if you start drinking at 12 or 13 years old, and I don't mean one drink, but if you start drinking at 12 or 13 years old, guess what? You freeze there. Emotionally.
Yeah.
So people don't realize that. It's amazing. I know when my husband got sober, I knew to honor, not demean, but honor his 12-year-old who was learning how to be a man in his 50s.
Learning to get to be a 13-year-old. Hey, it's 1 year at a time.
It's 1 year at a time, and it's taken time. And there were some times where I'd walk up and put my hand on his chest and say, I love you. And it wasn't saying it to the man. It was saying it to that little boy that was learning how to be emotional. And I honored him that way. I knew that he had to do his growth, because otherwise, where would we be in where we're at now? And a lot of people say, well, how can you not know the difference between the man speaking to you and that little boy? And I said, there's a tone, there's a worry, there's an impatientness, there's a well, what about me, feel to it. And when that happened, it wasn't that I treated him like a little boy, but I would have compassion. Perfect. And honor, Perfect. And sometimes I would have to say, just a minute, I'd walk away, get my composure, and come back.
And maybe it's the same way when they get their heart broken at 17, that they get stunted and they really don't grow after that. And that's just coming to me now for the first time. It's like being an alcoholic. They're stunted.
Yeah, exactly. So with that, because I've known that, I've actually told many people that wherever you start that stopping of being who you are, it could be a life-altering experience, i.e., somebody getting abused. It could be being hit or traumatized by a parent or a sibling or something, that you stop being that way. Sometimes as a parent who goes through cancer with a child, they stop at that time. I just had a client who I helped with that, bringing that part of her forward. That there's these dances that we go through where we get stopped and we need to bring it forward. I know that there's a lot of work that I'm doing through my dyslexic self, that I've had to bring my inner child that was like, but I don't know what to do. I'm so worried about that. I can't perform that, and it's like, well, come on, girl, we can do it. Look who we are today, And there's those, we all have this inner child. We all have this moments where we stop growth, and we need to help that part of us grow and change.
Yeah, I think what I've noticed, because I specialize in PTSD or trauma in my regular therapy practice. What I've noticed is that when people experience any sort of trauma, it kind of freezes them in time, in a sense. Mm-hmm. Like I can have someone, like I had a woman that was abused by her father she's from one of the wealthiest families in America. And he sexually abused her for 7 years, growing up. And she was just, in therapy, what I first realized, she's like 50 years old or something now. But when she thinks about a few of those instances, it's as if it happened yesterday, and she still feels like she's that child that's being abused. It's like time didn't really heal it. It just that trauma, So one of the things I think, and Bruce, maybe this helps too with couples that come in, they bring in a lot of this into their relationships, their frozenness of something that happened in their life. And when they bring it into the relationship, it causes issues because their partner doesn't understand why their other partner's flipping out so much at different things when the other partner thinks they had nothing to do with it, in which they didn't. But somehow they bring, so couples need to heal themselves. I think that's why I think therapy is good for both husband and wife, because that way they can not damage each other from things that happen to them from somebody else in their past.
When I started on the radio 30 years ago now, I started with a hypnotherapist. I can't quite remember his name now, but he explained something to me. He said, think of your life like a brick wall. And every once in a while, you've got red bricks, but then there's this brown brick or this broken brick that's making it so that it's not a super strong foundation. And what's great about hypnosis, what's great about the work that you do, Natasha, if people would just be willing to reach outside themselves and work with you, Regan, and work with you, Natasha, work with me as a one-on-one relationship coach, you get them to remove that broken brick and replace it with a nice fresh red one. And that getting rid of that one broken brick can really help.
Yeah. Oh, it's amazing. You can change your world spiritually, in your health, in your emotional I mean, it's amazing how those pieces do, because people say, oh, I want to get rid of it. No, you have to transform it. You have to help it mature, feel loved. There's been so many times I say, can you go back to that moment and hug it? Just say that you're okay. No matter who you are, what you did, you're okay. Just hug yourself, hug that moment. And they go, oh.
That's really nice. I feel bad now because I should have put my website address. You guys were smart. You put your website.
But your email address and stuff, I think, is in the comments.
Oh, okay.
Whatever you gave me, I copy and pasted it, so it's in the comments there. And we are at the end, but Bruce, we would love to have you back on. I know that.
I would love to come back. Well, all we did was talk comedy, which was great. I loved it.
But thank you, Paula. You even said that this was an amazing show, and I carried a smile on my face even when we were talking about negative stuff, because that was the lightness of our energy. So thank you, Paula, for saying that, because I do feel that this was an amazing show.
Well, I think today it was actually really good, because we talked about the importance of comedy. We talked about the importance of comedy in relationships, and we also acknowledged that being human beings, that comedy is a double-edged kind of thing. I mean, the comedians that did this a lot of times went through a lot of pain, and we, like with Robin Williams we talked about, and the others, and because they made us laugh so much and everything, it was very tragic to us for us to think that how could someone that makes somebody laugh and bring so much joy to the world end up committing suicide, I mean, that way. So it was, I think, just allowing us to see the humanness and and the bigger picture of things today.
Well, I really hope that we do more shows together, not just talk about it, because we obviously have something really cool here. And I really like.
We can set up something after the show. So
yeah, let's do one just totally about relationships and about how people who, matter of fact, with Bruce, with you having clients this way, you can give us some examples of before and afters, and
sure.
what they did to strengthen their relationships,
Yeah, it is hard not being able to be yourself, no matter who you are. Oh, I know, that's the trick, is the more we can find out who we are, and it's about breathing and being in the moment and saying, I trust myself.
Yeah, and your folks can write in all sorts of questions that they want to hear us talk about next time.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be great. That would be great, Bruce. So, Bruce, now, if someone wants to get a hold of you, what is your website? Go ahead and give that out on the air also.
So the website is the THE Open Heart Movement. theopenheartmovement.com. And my email is Luvcoach, L-U-V, coach1 @gmail.com. And I'd like to offer anyone who's listening to the show, if you want a free 15-minute conversation with me and see how I work, see how I can help you, absolutely free if you just mention Natasha.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. So Regan, how can people get a hold of you?
Well, on the screen there, visit theafterlife.com. There's some great videos on there. You can even see a session of a young woman that's going through a session. It's rather lengthy, but she gets to go to a past life and then goes to where you go between lives, and you can just see her adventure over there, which is great. And just to let people know that anybody in the world now can have a life between life session, because we're doing it online now and having just as much success as being with people in person. I prefer the in person if I'm within 500 miles, like I'm going to excuse me. So wait until the end here to cough. But also, if you are having any issues, PTSD, any traumas in your life that you haven't got over, or fears or phobias, that's something that could be done on Zoom online. And with these new energy psychology now, people get well rather quickly. It's not this, going to a therapist for the rest of your life to try to get over trauma. We can, I can help you get through it actually relatively easy. So, and Natasha, what about you?
You can reach me at angelicclarifications.com. I really enjoy, and I mean this with love, and it's my soul calling. That's why I enjoy it, bringing light to darkness for people. It's amazing to be able to work through our grief, shadows, shame, all those things, and find a purpose. And I work through past lives. I work through what's happened in our life. I consider this morning a past life, so it's one of those things that as we go through life, we all carry some form of shame, guilt, or why did this happen to me. And people have always said, I had like 5 different questions, but in the last couple minutes, I've put it all together because of the way that you have your perspective. So I love to bring better, lighter perspective. So,
and you also have a show. Your
shows, be in touch, Bruce.
Your show's on Wednesday, also, right?
Yes, I will have a show on Wednesday. What am I going to talk about on Wednesday? On Wednesday, the full moon. We're going through a powerful full moon, and it's about breaking down our old patterns. So I think that's kind of what I'm going to talk about, is the full moon and the patterns that we have that are calling to be broken down.
Yeah.
So it's a gift. It's a gift. And if you're looking, if you cannot, if you know somebody who could really use this show, please share it, like it, follow on my platforms. And also, too, if you're looking for podcasts, this show and other shows are on Life Clarifications with Natasha on podcasts. Thank you, Bruce, for being here. This was a gem of a moment to be with you. So grateful for you. Regan, please get healthy. I know it takes you a little bit of a walk sometimes, but yet you'll get there, and and you'll be healthy again. So blessings to all. See us next Monday. We do not know what we're going to be talking about next Monday, but we'll be back Monday at 4:00 Pacific time. I'm live Wednesdays at 4:00 Pacific time on the same stations, sometimes on Instagram. Blessings to all. Bye now.
See you next week.